you should apply for long-term care Medicaid. If someone has ever said this to you or a loved one, you might feel totally confused. What does that even mean? If you're looking for a basic breakdown of long-term care Medicaid eligibility, then you've come to the right place. I am Carla Levinson. I am a caregiver and an elder law attorney. When you have a loved one who needs long-term care, it can be overwhelming, it can be confusing, and it can be scary. Often, at some point in time, someone will bring up applying for Medicaid, and you might be thinking, what does that even mean? Don't we have too much money to apply for Medicaid? I thought Medicaid was just for poor people. As always, everyone's situation is different, but I've made this video to give you some basic information about long-term care Medicaid eligibility, so that if someone does start talking to you about that, you will be armed with some base level knowledge about the Medicaid program. As always, even though Medicaid is a federal program, it is administered by the states. So every state's rules are a little bit different. Make sure you check with an experienced elder law attorney in your state if you need specific advice about your specific situation. First, I want to clarify what long-term care Medicaid is and why you might need it. So when I'm talking about Medicaid in this video, what I'm talking about is the long-term care Medicaid program. There are a lot of different Medicaid programs. There are Medicaid programs that will pay for your health insurance if you have low income. There are Medicaid programs for pregnant women and young children. What we are talking about today is the Medicaid program that will help pay for your long-term care costs. In Delaware, if you qualify for long-term care Medicaid, Medicaid will pay your room and board in a nursing home. It will pay for a certain number of hours of in-home care to help with activities of daily living like bathing and dressing. And in very limited cases, it will also pay for room and board in assisted living. So that is the kind of care we are talking about. If you're paying $13,000 to $14,000 per month on long-term care or thousands of dollars for in-home care, how can you apply for Medicaid and have Medicaid cover those costs? In this video, we are just talking about Medicaid eligibility for a single person. I am keeping it very basic on purpose. The eligibility rules for a married couple are much more complicated. If you do want to find out more information about Medicaid eligibility for married couples, I will be filming a video on that soon, so stay tuned and look out for it. So how does Medicaid decide if you're eligible? Medicaid eligibility is a three-part test. The first thing that usually goes without saying, so I am not going to spend too much time on it today, is that in order to be eligible for long-term care Medicaid, you need a medical need for it. I don't spend too much time on this with my clients because usually if you are applying for long-term care Medicaid, you already have a medical need such that you'll meet the medical test for Medicaid eligibility. Because this is usually the case, I'm going to spend most of my time on this video talking about the financial eligibility rules for Medicaid. So in addition to showing a medical need, there is a two-part financial eligibility test for Medicaid. There is an income test and an asset test. This can get a little confusing because what Medicaid considers as income and an asset might be different than what you typically think of as income or an asset. So let's talk about income first. Income by Medicaid's definition is any money that you have coming in on a regular monthly basis. In 95% of cases, that is going to be what you have coming in from Social Security and or a pension. In Delaware, we have a gross monthly income limit for Medicaid. Not all states have this, so be sure to check your state to see what, if any, is your gross monthly income limit. In 2025, in Delaware, the gross monthly income limit is $2,437.50. Your monthly income is below $2,437.50, you meet the Medicaid income test. If your gross monthly income is over $2,437.50, you are over the Medicaid income limit. One thing to note, this is a gross monthly income limit. So when you're checking your loved one's income to see if they are above or below the limit, make sure you are looking at gross figures. For example, if you just look at someone's bank statement to see what they have coming in from Social Security, that is not going to be a gross amount. That is a net amount because Social Security takes out your Medicare premium deduction before they deposit your income into your account. So in order to really check and make sure that your loved one is below the gross monthly income limit, you need to make sure that you're looking at their Social Security award letter, or in the case of a pension, that you're looking at a letter from the pension source stating that is gross income. So once you've done that, and if you see that your loved one is over the gross monthly income limit, what do you do? Does this mean that your loved one can never be eligible for long-term care Medicaid? No. Fortunately, in Delaware and in many other states that have a monthly income limit, you can set up what is called a Miller Trust. The Miller Trust has some different names. Some states call it an IOT, which is an irrevocable income only trust. Other states call it a QIT or a qualified income trust. Other states like Delaware call it by a colloquial name of Miller Trust. All of these trusts are the same type of trust. And it's important to understand that this type of trust exists only for a very specific purpose, which is to get you below the Medicaid monthly income limit if your income is too high. I have a whole nother video that goes into detail about how the Miller Trust works, how to set it up, and how to use it. So if you would like more specific information about the Miller Trust, then check out my other video. For today, just keep in mind that if your loved one is over the income limit and your state has an income limit like we do in Delaware, your loved one will need to set up a trust like this before they can meet the Medicaid income test. So even if your loved one is below the Medicaid asset limit and they have a medical need for Medicaid, if you have not set up your Miller Trust correctly, then your loved one is not going to be income eligible for Medicaid. So that is the income test. Part 2 is the asset test. Asset eligibility for Medicaid can be very confusing because there is a lot of misunderstanding and misinformation about what is an asset for Medicaid eligibility purposes. First of all, in Delaware, in 2025, if you are a single person applying for long-term care Medicaid, you cannot have assets above $2,000. That number has not changed for many, many years. I've been practicing Medicaid law since 2007, which is over 17 years, and in 17 years, that number has not changed. All to say is that that is a very, very low number to be below in order to meet the Medicaid asset test. A topic for another day and another video is that there are a lot of ways that we can protect assets from Medicaid accountability so that you don't have to spend all your assets down to $2,000. But again, that is a topic for another day and another video to check out on my page. So if Medicaid says that you have to be below $2,000, what does that mean? So if Medicaid says that you have to be below $2,000 in assets, what does that mean? That means that whatever Medicaid calls a countable asset must be below $2,000 in total. What does Medicaid count as a countable asset? The short answer, unfortunately, is pretty much everything. Medicaid says that if you can get cash for something, then they are going to count that as an asset against your Medicaid eligibility. So if you have $5,000 in your checking account, you are going to be above the $2,000 Medicaid asset limit. Medicaid is also looking at money in your savings account, your stocks, your bonds, even your life insurance. So the general rule is if you have it and you can get cash for it, then Medicaid will count it. As I said before, this is an oversimplification, and Medicaid does have some common exceptions. One major exception is a prepaid, irrevocable funeral arrangement. If you prepay your funeral and it is an irrevocable contract, Medicaid will not count it against your $2,000 limit. So for example, if you have $12,000 in your savings account and you spend $11,000 of that on an irrevocable prepaid funeral, you would be below the $2,000 asset limit for Medicaid. Medicaid would subtract the $11,000 that you put into the funeral from your total savings of $12,000 and consider that you have $1,000, which is below the $2,000 asset limit for Medicaid. Another exemption, Medicaid does not count personal belongings. Medicaid does not count one car, regardless of its value. This one can get a little tricky because, at least in Delaware, the title to the car must be in the Medicaid applicant's name. And if a Medicaid applicant is going to be in a nursing home, the cost of maintenance, insurance, and upkeep for the car is sometimes too much for the Medicaid applicant to pay, because if you begin receiving Medicaid and you're in a nursing home, Medicaid will only allow you to retain $75 for personal needs, and most times that is not enough to cover the cost of maintaining the car. One of the last common exceptions is life insurance, with a combined total face value of $1,500 or less, regardless of the cash surrender value of the policies. So for example, if you have a life insurance policy with a face value of $1,000, but you could cash it in because the cash surrender value is $3,500, that life insurance policy will not be counted against your $2,000 asset limit. You also may have heard that your primary residence is exempt from Medicaid countability, and that is technically true. However, there are some caveats to that a lot of people don't realize and don't think about. So yes, your home is exempt, and Medicaid will not count the value of your home against your $2,000 asset limit. However, Medicaid will have you sign paperwork stating that if you move into a nursing home and don't return home within a certain amount of time, Medicaid has a right to place a lien on your property. This means that anytime either you or a loved one after you're gone goes to sell this property, if a lien has been placed by Medicaid, that lien will need to get repaid upon sale of the house. The other thing that Medicaid will explain and require you to sign off on is that your home is also subject to what is called estate recovery. This means that after you pass away, if your house is still in your estate, Medicaid has a right to make a claim against your estate for amounts that they've paid out for you. So again, if you pass away and your home is worth $200,000, but Medicaid has paid out $150,000 for your care, Medicaid will seek to get $150,000 from your estate, of which your home may be a part. So again, in that case, you would not be able to sell your house until you paid Medicaid back from the proceeds. So there you have it, the basic rules of Medicaid eligibility. You have a medical need and you must be below the income limit and the asset limit. But there is one more big piece to Medicaid eligibility, and that is the 5-year look back. Part 2 of this video covers the 5-year look back, what it is, how it works, and how it can affect your Medicaid eligibility. So please also check out part 2 of this video so that you can have the full picture of long-term care Medicaid eligibility. Thanks for watching.